On the first day of the presidency, President Trump withdrew from the WHO.
Mm.
And initially, I thought that was amazing because obviously, with everything going on, the people's trust in WHO is probably at the lowest it's ever been. But then in a follow-up interview, it sounded like he's considering going back, and it was not. He didn't leave because of the disagreement in kind of the methods and how the WHO acts, but really it's because he feels though the United States is paying too much while China is paying too low. So the goal is to get WHO to reduce the amount that the United States buys into or pays into, and then it sounds like he's going to join again. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Greatly concerning. It looks like Trump doesn't get it. The problem, what's Trump worried about? I think our all-in cost for WHO is 6.8 billion. We're hemorrhaging billions of dollars to these, tens of billions of dollars to these worldwide conflicts. Trump wanted, quote, a better deal. The problem here is that the WHO has become a behemoth. It's got many tens of thousands of employees. They have over 140 national focal points, NFPs. There's one in Washington, D.C., right down from where Trump is called PAHO, the Pan American Health Organization. The national focal points is how the WHO coordinated the messages. So do you remember during the pandemic where there would be a message that went out in the press all at once on the same day where they were saying the same thing? Did you see these montages of where everyone, and it was worldwide, Matt. So if it was going on here, it was going on in the Philippines and in Polynesia, Australia, Russia. How they did it is they did it through national focal points. So here's one, I'm sure you recognize this one. No one is safe.
Hmm.
And it went out everywhere. No one is safe. No one is safe. That was one of the early ones. Later on, there was one, crisis of the unvaccinated.
Oh.
And that one came out everywhere. That was coordinated through WHO. I interviewed Lisa Myra, an investigative attorney in Toronto, and she had nailed this one. So the WHO deceived us on this messaging. Remember when the outbreak occurred in Wuhan, the WHO was supposed to do outbreak investigation. So the WHO reached out to the White House Task Force, and one of my contemporaries, he went to medical school where I went as Admiral Brett Giroir. And so Brett selects 3 independent scientists from the United States to go to Wuhan. This is early in 2020 to investigate. The WHO says, no, we don't want those. We want Peter Daszak. So the WHO selected a guy who was one of the creators of SARS-CoV-2. So Daszak had been to that lab dozens of times. Daszak had spent over $250,000 of U.S. taxpayer money flying first class from United States to Wuhan. So Daszak goes over there, and you can find this, anywhere on the internet. There's all kinds of, news pieces written up, and Daszak investigates. He goes, well, I don't know where this virus came from, but it definitely wasn't the lab. So the WHO actively participated in the cover-up of the lab origins of SARS-CoV-2. And then, after that, the WHO actively suppressed early treatments, everything that worked from nasal sprays and gargles to hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, all the drugs that worked. And then the WHO later on relentlessly promoted the vaccines. So the WHO on COVID was a disaster. And I think the capper, there was worldwide protests last year at the World Health Assembly in Geneva. This is amazing. And the reason why people were protesting is the WHO had a pandemic treaty alliance and international health regulations where they wanted binding authority over all plants, animals, and humans in the world, meaning they could call the next lockdown. They could call, forced mass vaccination. They could shut down farms, reduce food supply. They could do anything they want to. The WHO had supreme power over the world. So people were saying, listen, get out of the WHO. This has become a behemoth or out of control. So when Trump, that first executive order, the WHO was one of the first 17 on day one. Everyone cheered. And then Trump goes, well, maybe I'll get back in the WHO. Everyone's like, here we are back to old Trump again. It's just, we just have to do better.
We have to do better because we know what happened. We know what. I feel like if we join the WHO and then you see what's going on with the AI mRNAs and you see what's going on with this flu vaccine and all the signals are there, all the dots are there, actually for anyone to connect if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in this place where we just don't want to think any longer. We've just decided as a population that we're just no longer going to think for ourselves. Critical thinking out the window. Let's just take everything at face value, which is what got us into the situation that we are today. Now let's just take everything at face value. I'm sure that everyone in power has our best interests at hand, which is crazy because never in the history of the world have the people in power always had the best interests of the people in hand. But this is where we are now. And I'm spinning in circles and I feel like I am the most skeptical I've ever been in my life. And I'm looking around and I feel like the people are most complicit they've ever been in their life. And I'm going, what's going on here? And you were one of the early adopters, and I'm going to just question everything, especially during COVID. That was not easy to do, by the way, because a lot of people were saying that you were dangerous, that you had to be removed from the internet. And when they removed you, people were almost cheering like it had to be done. And it's funny because the people that were on that side are doing the questioning now. And the people that were on your side then are the ones that are just complicit now. It's like we have this flip in society. And I'm having a really hard time these days putting it all together.
We're living through a mind-blowing reality. We really are. So it's not only the COVID controversy, but, building behind this has been this hyperbolic increase in the number of childhood vaccines. I mean, it is really built up. You have little kids now. And, I took all the vaccines. My kids took all the vaccines. But when I look back on it, early on in childhood, there was relatively few vaccines. Now, as you get older, to take, a childhood vaccine as you're older, there's less side effects. But when the baby is growing and the neurologic system is growing, and they get popped with a whole bunch of shots all together, there's a great risk. So at around 15 months, the kids get about 16 things all at once. And the published studies show that if a child goes home and gets sick with a febrile seizure, man, it can happen. About 3% of kids have febrile seizures. If a febrile seizure happens, the child has about a 40% chance of developing autism from that febrile seizure. That's been shown in a paper by Nicholson and colleagues. Now there's 5 studies showing the converse, that in today's world, if children take no vaccines whatsoever, recent paper out by Mawson in the journal Science, Public Health Policy and the Law, if the kids take no vaccines whatsoever, they're healthier. They're healthier. They have lower rates of asthma and atopic dermatitis and need for ear infections and lower rates of neuropsychiatric disorders like ADD and autism spectrum disorder and seizures. So this is not looking good, that this hyper-vaccination is linked to childhood illnesses.
Thanks for watching the clip. If you want to see the full episode, click here. If you want to see more clips, click here.